Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Optron Geospatial Technologies webinar. The topic for today is smart measurement technologies for a safer, more efficient mining operation. And the focus for today will be on the Carlson range of products. Can I ask that you please mute your microphones and switch off your cameras? And feel free to leave questions in the chat, and we'll get back to those after the presentations. Let's quickly look at the agenda for today. First, we'll introduce the speakers for today. Then we'll look at a product overview of the focusing on the Carlson products. We'll look at some case studies. We'll see how the products can improve your operational efficiency and your cost optimization. And then at the end, we'll have some space for Q&A. So just to introduce the presenters today, my name is Kobus Botha. I'm the Group Segment Manager for Optron. With us, we've got Gustav Fuchs he's the Director of Sales for Carlson LMD. And we've got Mpho Sequela from Optron. He's our Product Portfolio Manager for Reality Capture. Gustav and Mpho, if you can introduce yourselves, please.
Oh, thank you, Kobus, and thank you to all. Thank you for attending our webinar today. My name is Gustav Fuchs. I'm the Director of Sales for Africa at Carlson Software. I work closely with Optron, with their mining clients and their survey teams across the continent, helping implement Carlson solutions for cavity monitoring, borehole deviation measurements, and just typical mine surveying. Thank you, Kobus.
Thanks, Gustav. And Mpho?
Thank you, Kobus. My name is Mpho Sequela. I am a Product Portfolio Manager for Reality Capture, as Kobus has mentioned. I am looking after Carlson and other Trimble scanners and other portfolio, but the main purpose for today is we are focusing on a Carlson 3D capture. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mpho. Thanks, Gustav. So, Gustav, at this point, I'm going to give over to you. You can take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Kobus. Just bear with me. Just want to quickly get myself up and running here. Okay, just want to share my screen quickly. All right, there we go. Kobus, maybe just give me a heads up when you can see my screen there. I'm just going to go from the current slide. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, guys, so really today is really just a quick portfolio overview of what's happening in the Carlson LMD portfolio. As you know, LMD is mainly focused on mining. For those who are not familiar with this, back in the day, the Renishores and the MDLs was acquired by Carlson Software. And then, we saw a lot of developments happening in the portfolio. And that really is just what I want to touch on about today. Just a little bit about Carlson Software. It's primarily well known in the US, founded by Bruce Carlson back in 1993 already, where it was ultimately focused on software. It began with mine surveying and permitting software. Our headquarters are in Maysville, Kentucky. We've got a programming office where all the programmers basically resides. That's in Boston. And then our LMD manufacturing center is in York in England. We pride ourselves in having an extensive LMD global dealer network, of which we are very proud to be associated with Optron. And then we've got satellite offices scattered all over, over the world. The big ones are really in Canada. We've got an office in Melbourne, Australia, and then in the Netherlands, Lisbon in Portugal. And hopefully in the near future, we will see some more growth in here as well. So just really in terms of, the hardware ecosystem, our key, our focused products, I've just quickly outlined them and kind of just put them on the screen here. So mainly our drill deviation units, I'm going to start with those ones, which is the latest, the BoardTrack 3 and the BoardTrack 360. Then for those of you who are familiar with the Void Scanner, our cavity mapping system on the bottom left-hand side. Then also the Quarryman Pro, and then the CALS HD system, which is to also map cavities in inaccessible areas. So the main focus really for today will be on the BoardTrack series and also on the CALS HD products that we have in our portfolio. For the Void Scanner and the Quarryman Pro, I'm just going to touch on that and just do a quick recap of what they basically do in the roles that they fulfill. So the Quarryman Pro, it's still available. The Quarryman Pro has been kind of coming along for quite some time, but it's still being used today, mainly in quarries and also on mine sites where where long-range scanning needs to take place. And this is really kind of the key feature with the Quarryman Pro. You're looking at about 1,200 meters that it can scan. It also has typical total station capabilities where you can measure collar positions. Let's say in a typical open pit mine, you can measure that in by using typical total station principles of fixing your position and then obviously doing the measurements. But this is really the tool of choice when you need to do measurements on your site and also for long range scanning. The VS Plus, which is our Void Scanner, as most of you might know it, this is typically when you have an underground cavity and you need to map the cavity and work out what the volume is. What you do is you take the Void Scanner or the VS Plus, you mount it on a boom, you deploy it into the cavity. You can now georeference your scans by measuring the back and the front of the boom to now georeference the scan. So when you perform the scan, that data is already georeferenced if the data was available and it was measured, prior to the deployment. You can also do it after, so giving you some flexibility in terms of when you do your data capturing. The big benefit really is having that data in real time. So after you've performed your scan, you can already calculate what the volume is. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more when I get onto the CALS HD, because they basically use the same software, which is our Coulson Scan software package, where you can now interact with your data and then do the volumetrics on site in real time. So yeah, the focus products will be the BoardTrack 3 and the BoardTrack 360. The latest edition is the BoardTrack 360, as you guys can see there on the right-hand side. But this is our drill hole deviation measurement tools. I mean, we've learned a couple of lessons over the years when it comes to drill hole surveying, in terms of the use of it, what to do, what not to do. And I would say, for us putting a lot of focus in this is definitely one of our flagship products, just purely because the thing is, at the end of the day, mines need to measure what they drill, and depending if they're using contractors or if they're doing them themselves, obviously it is to mine as closest to the design as possible. And that's really what I'm going to touch on, just in general. So what is a BoardTrack? And this is just a quick kind of I've dotted a couple of points down. As I've mentioned, it's a drill hole deviation tool. It's mainly used on underground mines. It can be used on open pit mines as well, depending if you're doing, you've got different options in terms of deployment. Obviously with open pit, you will do downhole deployments. And then if it's underground, I have the option of doing a downhole or uphole, or basically kind of side deployments also. So the big technology inside of the BoardTrack is really, it's got a built-in IMU where it measures all the different movements in the different directions, determines the heading in which this BoardTrack goes. You then capture the as-built of the drill hole, and then the idea is then to compare that against the design to see how far you are from the design, and then basically kind of that will give you insights to the blasting that you need to do. So yeah, obviously linking the technology up with software, this gives you basically the capabilities either on-site or off-site to now determine how accurate the drill was actually done. The big thing, what I want to focus on here is just, why is there two options? The BoreTrack 3 and the BoreTrack 360. So the industry really demanded a lighter version of the BoreTrack 3, where production is key, and especially for uphill deployments. So our manufacturing and our engineering division basically took upon themselves to go and make changes to, firstly, the material. You will also see a difference in the gyro rotation limit, but the big change is really in the material, where we change from the typical stainless steel over to anodized aluminium, where we drop the weight of the BoreTrack 3 down to 1.5. But obviously, with making all of these changes, there is always a give and take. And this is really kind of the things that I would like to touch on. You will also note that there is a different IP rating for the BoreTrack 3 and the BoreTrack 360. The BoreTrack 3 comes with the IP68 rating compared to the BoreTrack 360's IP66. So the BoreTrack 3 is really when you have harsh environments like typically all our mines have. Let's say there's water presence, or there's a water presence in downhole deployments. The BoreTrack has a higher IP rating and it's fully waterproof, so it can work and handle these kind of measurements better and obviously protect the unit, where the BoreTrack 360 is not fully waterproof. So that's really kind of the big differences between the two. The big reasons, and that maybe just bring me to my next slide, my apologies for that. This is really where I just kind of, the big question is when to use which one. So based on what I've mentioned, and I'm going to quickly just run through, the BoreTrack 3 is really, because of its IP rating and also the material, it can really be used in all different environments. Where the BoreTrack 360, I mean, it can still do different deployment options, uphill or downhill. But the big thing is really just kind of, you need to be mindful of the environment that you're working in, and make sure that, where you do the deployment, if production is really key, the BoreTrack 360 really makes for a good option to use. So all in all, we've got different options depending on the environment that you're working in, depending on what your key focuses are. We really have a tool that will fit your needs. And this is really kind of the big reason why there was a BoreTrack 360 that we manufactured. The typical deployment accessories, on the left-hand side, I'm going to start from left to right. Your left-hand side is your standard 50-meter cables for downhole deployments. You will see also it's marked every meter. Then we move over to the rod stack. You still get the rod stack. It's still available. Downhole and uphill versions. The difference really in the uphill version is that it's got hinges that basically locks, so that when you push it vertically, is that it doesn't bend. So that's really kind of the key difference between the uphill and the downhole rod stacks. And then also we're seeing more and more of this option and the demand for this picking up on the semi-rigid reels, where you can do uphill and downhill deployments, and especially linking this up with the BT360 makes for quite a easy to use system, compared to the BoreTrack 3 with the rod stack. So this is really kind of just, the typical accessories that, depending on how you want to do your deployments and the environment that you're working in, this is typically how we would use, how we would help and guide you to put together the best solution going forward. Also, the topic that's not really kind of talked a lot about is the need for centralizers. So the big thing here, the reason for the centralizers is to avoid having the bore track zigzagging inside of the hole. So depending on your hole diameter that's being drilled, we have different options, centralizer bows that you put on your bore track. So for example, if you have a 70 millimeter diameter hole that's being drilled, the thing is the rule of thumb is always also to use the previous size that's available. So for instance, 70-meter drill diameter hole, opt for the GT10. That will give you a total width of the probe's diameter is 40 millimeters, plus the spacing of the bows, which is 10-10, which gives you that 20. So in total, it will be that 60 millimeters. You'll put that on, and then you do the deployment. This will just help that it reduces that zigzagging effect inside of the hole. Also, what's important, obviously, when you do your deployments and you take your readings, which I will touch on in my next slides, is make sure when you take your readings is that you keep the unit still. So this is quickly just to touch on that. The centralizers, they basically they connect together. You can tie them with cable ties, and then off you go. Also, the rule of thumb is to use 3 on the bore track when you do your deployments. Then the accessories, here you will see with part of the system will be a tablet with the Carlson bore track software on. So there's a Bluetooth connection between the bore track and obviously the tablet. We've got options for Windows-based and Android. So also when you do your deployment and there's a Bluetooth connection lost because of the deployment, obviously, as soon as you bring that bore track back within range of the tablet, the data will be uploaded. So that's just typically how the communication is established between the tablet and the bore track. Just to quickly touch on the field workflow, this is purely just so that, that you guys just get an understanding of how it works. Is typically what you would do, you would align your bore track to the collar position. If you've got a line of different holes, you can line it up with the front and the back collars. And I'm now especially referring to a ring drill holes that needs to be scanned. So you can line them up, and then you can start with the aligning of the gyro. That will bring me to the next step. So firstly is just aligning it, keeping it basically in a stable surface. There you can see typically what the horizontal tolerance should be. You will align it. You will click on Align Gyro. It will take about 3 seconds to align. And then from there on, depending if you want to continue and just capture the points or key in the front and the back collar positions to determine the heading to get your data georeferenced in the field already, you can do that. So depending, or you can also do that afterwards, after you've done the data capturing. Once you're done with this, you can click on Finish. Once you've clicked Finish, the lights on the bore track will turn green, meaning it's ready to do the data capturing. And then from there on, you can start with your deployment. So what's also important when you do your deployment, you need to specify the segment length. So if it's going to be 1 meter or 2 meters, and then you just basically deploy according to that. Just typically what you can expect and how the interaction with the bore track software can work. This is where you can now import models. You can now, when you do the deployments, you can already see where the drill holes are drilled in relation to your models. You can import the designs also beforehand, before you actually go to the field, to already see what those deviations are. So really kind of giving you a lot of flexibility in terms of data capturing. The next thing also is when you've got point cloud data, and this is really more just on a QA QC perspective, working with models inside of your Carlson board track software. You can also import point cloud data if you need to just quickly see, how your drill holes are lining up with your georeference point cloud. You can do that as well. Then once all of that is done, you can now perform data analysis and then generate your deliverables. This is typically just how you can interact with your different deployments. You can take hole for hole, just visually see what it is. This is also the step that you would follow if you need to key in the collar positions after the deployment was done. You can now go and you can interact with the data like this and make the necessary changes before you can now generate your reports and then also your deliverables. So this is typically how the reports would look like after you have now, you've performed the QA QC of your data. You can now export a report, which will typically look like this. Then the next product is on the CALS HD. As you guys can see there, real-time exploration, real-time investigation, real-time validation. And this is when you have inaccessible voids, that you cannot get access to. Let's say typically you've got a void underground, but you can get access to that void through drilling a drill hole, getting into that cavity. Now you can deploy the CALS HD unit into that drill hole so that you can see when you enter that void and then to perform the necessary scanning scan work of that void and determine what the volume is. So this is just typically where a CALS HD would be used. Obviously, if you have cavities in your underground, you can do horizontal deployments as well. So you've got options. This is just to sketch a typical scenario when this would be used. So I'm just going to quickly just touch on, okay, right, what is a CALS HD? And once again, there's been a lot of different series of the CALS. Back in the Renishaw days, where it all started, we had different versions of the CALS. Now we've got the CALS HD. The HD is really with that high definition camera that you have in the front of your nose cone. But it's a scanner, it's got an inbuilt camera. It's also have a lighting capabilities so that you can see better what's happening underground. And it's got an IP67 rating. So this is just some of its key specifications that the CALS HD system basically comprise of. Then I have a quick video that I just want to quickly touch on because this really explains it very nicely. As I mentioned, and this is just to put some visual context to it. So if you've got that void, doesn't matter in which direction it is. When I say direction, if you can do uphole deployments as well, obviously just need to kind of be mindful of the weight of the system. But you drill that drill hole, there you can see just the size of the diameter of the CALS. You will deploy that in. It works very similar to the board track, the way of deployment, and it's got a built-in board track technology as well, built-in IMU. So there you can see you deploy it inside of the cavity. It performs the scan, it maps it out, and then that's how you can start interacting with the point cloud data inside of the Carlson scan software. So what it basically shows here is just how the scan basically works. You've got horizontal scans and you've got vertical scans that will now give you that full 360 view. Also something to be mindful of is blind spots. So depending on the size of the void, you might need to consider doing a second deployment. Once again, once you've done the scan, you will already have a good idea of what your next step should be. Right. I think this really just covers what I wanted to touch on. The new accessories on our CALS HD, for those who are familiar with the CALS, you know, from previous use cases, you would pick up that cables, you don't have those markers on the cables, but those cables are still available. We call that's our node cables, you know, and this is the control cable, this yellow control cable here. But we also we've introduced a deployment counter. So what the deployment counter basically does, it works with a node list cable, what you guys can see on the screen. And this basically does the measurement for you as to how deep you are deploying now. So the whole idea here is that it makes the data capturing process easier, where you don't have to kind of remember, you know, which nodes that you actually had to kind of take the measurements on. So this is really kind of a new way for us to really kind of make the data capturing process a little bit more streamlined. The typical, you know, extra accessory on the field tablet side of things, this is where your Carlson scan software now runs on. Here you can now see typically how the software would look like. Then on the right-hand side, we have a control box where that power cable now plugs in, that's connected to the CALS HD. This connection between the tablet and the Surface Box, that's a Wi-Fi connection. And there you can now see that yellow cable plugging into the CALS HD unit. So this is how it all comes together with the deployment counter. The deployment counter also have a Wi-Fi connection that's connected to the Surface Box, and that's how all of this basically comes together. Then on my last one, before I wrap my part of the presentation up, is just, okay, right, so how does it work? Typically when you need to do the actual data capturing, I did mention to you a little bit earlier, you've got a horizontal and a vertical scan that will now give you the complete 360 coverage. So when you connect, it's now connecting to the CALS HD, just doing a quick system diagnostic. This is typically what you would see here. That's the live feed coming from the nose cone of the CALS HD. So the nice thing is you can now see and track what's happening. When you get into that void, you will see when you're entering that void to now prepare you for that scan. So this is just the different scans that's been done. You can now start interacting with that. So what you see here is a point cloud that has been preloaded, and you do this, perform the scan, and then you can already measure your data up to determine what the total volume is. Thank you. That's basically my part of the presentation. I'm now going to hand over to Kobus again. And then thanks, Kobus.
Thanks, Gustav. That was quite nice. And Paul, I'm going to hand over to you, and then you can take us through some case studies, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go here. Thank you, Kobus. Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I'll just going through the case studies. This one, it came from Mopane Copper, Yuko, and Nkoshi is the one that given us authority to share this data with the rest of us and the rest of you guys. As you can see, on the left-hand side, you've got the data set here. We've got the upper level and the down level, and on the right-hand side, we've got the design. So as we kick off this discussion of this case study, then I'll just start by asking ourselves questions. How do you measure your utilization and your productivity? If you don't have tools to do it, at the end of the day, you don't know how far you could have went or how low you went. So in their case, they were trying to measure what, after the drill, what are the benefits of deploying something that they can measure their drill hole and how they can interpret the data. So far, they've came across the PodTrack and said, okay, if we use this tool, what will be the benefit of using this tool and how it can benefit us, how it can optimize our cost, how it can improve our safety and operation efficiency. Those are the main key points that they came across. As you can see on the right hand side here, they have the design on 2D. The green ones are the planned or the design, and the purple ones were the PodTrack hole as drilled, right? And as we move on, I'll go with those key benefits in details. The next one here, as you can see on the right hand side, on this one, they will have a certain target of their holes that they need to drill per month, per ring, right? And before they were just measuring with the tape, and the tape, yes, it is good enough when you measure. If they just say this hole is 50 meters, you deploy the tape, you got 50 meters. But you know, as we drill, we are not getting 50 meters per se. We still want those deviation, those millimeters, and those trajectory, those geometry of your holes. As you can see on this one, the planned meters per ring, it was 111 meters, but the actual drill meters, it was 98.6 meters. So on this one, not to speak bad about others, but on this one, if you do your planning properly, and remember on this one, you are paying per meters drill per month or per ring per section per day. On this one, it means there was a short of meters where they were drilled. And if you look here, you've got on the right hand side here, you've got the outline blast where everything else, when it is planned, everything must drill to this blast line. And after the next slide, I will go through the impact of this one. If you look here, this one, they were under drilling. On this one here, they were over drilling and under drilling, which is not required. It's either you are on par, there's nothing more, there's nothing less on that one. On this one, through this picture here, we've got two scenarios. The first one, the benefit of using this PodTrack and how it helped them. You can detect the problem areas. As you can see on the right hand side here, they did not drill up to the parameters set out, and the planned one, it was 134, then which in actual fact, it says this red line highlighted here, it will be one of the problem areas. And with the PodTrack, just showing that you can put preventative measures before you can deploy the explosive on this one. And if you look at on the right hand side, we've got areas where they've missed to drill this hole here, and we've got another one. Yes, they did not miss, but there is a gap because after certain length, the geometry or the trajectory of the drill is started drifting this side and this side. And what will be the unpredictable results? On this one, if it is uphole deployment, you might having hanging ground where it was supposed to be drilled, and on the right hand side, if you've got over drilled, then less, for argument's sake, we can say this, it was the reef going along this side. Now if you over drill after blasting, everything, even the rock, will fall, which it is not part of what it is required. Then on this one, if you can check pictures on the right hand side, the red ones are the drilled position, and the rainbow ones are the planned ones. As you can see, they're just a red line. On this one, they've almost done a perfect job but they still have some few things on this side, and on this side there were those under drilled. And what will be the impact? How does this will impact your results or your productivity on this one? First thing first, you will have uneven fragmentation. What do I mean by that? If everything is not blasted according to the design, your rock fragmentation, it will be too big, and you've got a specific. On this one, when they have planned this design, they know if it's 2 meters or it's 5 meters apart per hole. The rock fragmentation, it might be the size of the tennis ball, but if we have scattered ones, we've got this one and they've missed this one here. Now, after blasting, you stand a chance of having bigger rocks, which it will delay you when you are picking the material, when you are loading the material, and even it will increase your but your rock dilution. When now you're blasted, the ore, now the rocks and the ore is mixed. When crushing, even when processing, it will take time. Remember, everything is up to spec, so that from the whole cycle of drilling, mining, processing, everything is measured on time. Normally it will take time. Now the productivity is low because these things were not done according to the design. And on this one, how does it help these guys here? This one here is almost perfect. It's almost, this one we can live with, but this one we cannot live with. Why? This one, it will be under under break, and if another one is protruding outside, it will be over break. Then the issue of this one, when you do planning, you need to make sure that you've got number of trucks that will pick up material, and you know the time allocated to those things. If they are charging you per hours, you know, okay, this hours we are charging this much, this hours we are charging this much, and from 6 to 6, 20 trucks will be allocated to grab this material or go through the conveyor belt. But now if you've got under break, you'll deploy resources, then but the resources will gonna be too much for the work. And if it's under break, you'll deploy 20 trucks and only 15 trucks can pick, and there's nothing. It means on the cost-effective side of the whole cycle of mining, it will impact. So this one is just to help us to understand and make better decisions before we can blast. And even just to add on the loading side of your materials, some certain rock fragmentation, it cannot be loaded on conveyor belts. It means you still need to go back. It's either you still blast again or you go manual, so that at least it can fit the specific tolerances that it can be loaded on the conveyor belt. Those kind of things, they impact. Next slide. If we are here, I'm just going to go through this report just to demonstrate. On this one, we've got the measured, it was 20 meters from the top of the collar to the bottom of the hole. And we've got the deviation, and the planned one, it was 60 meters. It means there was 3.5 meter deviation. The planned one was 16, but when they drilled to 20 meter. So this one, it will reduce, or it will help you to know how you can deploy. If you make a decision to go and re-drill next to it, or how you charge your hole, so that when you blast, at least there's a minimum. In this case, let's just assume that you're going to, per hole, you were doing 3 explosive per hole. On this one, because now you've got a length, you can make a decision, okay, let's just do every 5 meters, not every 1 meters. Let's just put one explosive or 2 explosives, so that it doesn't go above. As even on these pictures, I'm sure you're wondering, during Gustav's presentation, he talks about the centralizer, so that it doesn't move. This one, the data, it was captured without the centralizer, hence it was moving this with this zigzag thing. And if you look at our report, right, on the right hand side, at 1 meter, there was not much of the deviation. As we go now, you start seeing the deviation, even in terms of percentage, almost 110 mils as you go. At the 20 meters, it was at 3.5, which this one, it will depend on your actual spec. If the specs allows you that, okay, if it deviated more than 5%, should we re-drill again, or should we charge more explosive? But on this one, now when you make that decision, it goes with the cost. Re-drilling, it means now you still need to pay again for re-drilling. Adding more explosive than the planned one is additional cost. But with this one, your productivity, it will be impacted as well. Let's come this side. Okay, what are the impact of poor drilling and poor blasting? Normally, you'll just have insufficient or uneven fragmentation. Like I've said, on that one, this one, it will just help us to detect things early so that we can make a decision. And even on this operation and impact of the drilling, so normally the re-drilling, it is the best option, or adding another hole so that when we blast, we've got what the plant and the drill, so that all the resources that are deployed are used effectively. Then operational problems on this one caused by poor drilling. Let's just assume on an open pit, we've got a big machinery and they did not blast according to the design. You just, okay, this one is fine, you can go and design. It will leave those hanging all unstable ground. Once you deploy heavy machinery, they can sink in on that hole. But if everything is drilled to design, at least we know with this one, we still have a stable ground and it is easy to support. It doesn't become unsafe. And this one, it will just help you to reduce even number of fatalities, so that you know on this one here, this is your, according to design, everything is done to spec, then there will be less delays, which it can help you on that one. And on this one, poor drilling will always lead to a dilution of ore. Now you've over drilled, now everything your ore is mixed with rocks. Now the cleaning process, it becomes too much, or the filtering process, or the crushing process, now it increases because we've budgeted for this much for this fragmentation. Now everything becomes longer than expected. And this one, even on the cost control, it helps us just to detect or to re-drill and even to deploy more resources than we go there. It means like now there's a poor planning. There's too much material to be excavated, and now there are only few trucks are there. But if we have those things before, you can, it will help you to deploy your resources faster and easier. Then if you go to operational cost, this one, okay, it will help you with your explosive. 1 ring, 10 holes, you might have 20 explosive, but if the poor drilling is done, it means it's either you will need to increase your explosive, or if it's under break or under drilled, now it means with that one, if you still want to go with that one, now instead of deploying, distributing 20 explosive, you can just say, okay, per this design, you can deploy 15 explosive. Now you are saving per this report. And if I may just add the last point, because I've went through this on the next slide, the cost saving decision, right? On this one, it can help you before you deploy anything, or before you can go for blasting, right? You might go to the drillers and tell them, guys, okay, let me just check one hole, and we check against the bot rack, and we check their drill if it is calibrated, because most of the time those things are not calibrated, which it will require you to calibrate the machine and the bot rack so that everything, it is still good, and it will save you time, save your resources, and it will increase your productivity. Then all the resources will be well allocated. And explosive waste and material waste. So when ore is diluted with too much rocks, it will just go as waste because it might break the machines. And on the cost savings again, with excavators and those bulldozers and everything, if there are big rocks, normally your machine will wear faster. But if you have those, we can see this first before we can blast and make better decision. Now your machine conveyor belt will last longer because they'll be carrying the exact weight that it is designed for. Then on the Carlsen, I was on the Botrac. On the Carlsen, normally it works the same as the Botrac. The only difference is it's got the camera and it can scan the void. You deploy the same way. Once you get to your cavity, right, that's where you can scan your cavity. Then this one, it helps us to quantify the amount of the backfill material that needed to pump and on scan areas where you have scanned. Okay, we've got this much of volume, this the much of materials we need to fill in, and so that you can support your ground and your field. But if you don't have such information prior in doing that, the next thing you try to plus this one, then you find out that okay, actually we did not fill the whole volume, we only fill 50% of it, which is gonna cause production delay and everything. With this one, you scan every hole and you've got a true point cloud, which it will give you volumes and everything, the Botrac and the Carls HD, everything it is your reference. And you've got accurate point cloud data that you can visualize and make a better decision. As you deploy it, you will see the visual 3D visuals and the camera visuals of your scan data. Then this is just an example of from where you was deployed and where your data will look like. But this one, it is not the same for every. It is different per area you are scanning. Everything's only going to come this one. This is just an area of scan we did. And on the software side, you don't need to do surfaces. You will just get what we call a real-time volume. After you've done scanning, you just go there, give me the volumes, the software will give you the volumes. Thank you very much, guys. I'll take it to Cobus.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I like most about the Botrac is in terms of cost saving, it doesn't just save you cost on the actual where you have to pay the actual meters drilled versus the plant, but it also saves cost where your ore is not diluted and you also don't use more explosives than you need to, so you can really optimize whatever you're doing. So let's quickly have a look at the chat window. So let's quickly see what we have here. Luan asked if we had get a presentation of this. Yes, Luan, we will share the recording of this webinar will be shared on our website. It will also be, you'll probably also receive an email with that recording. Gustav, I maybe have a question for you. I saw in your presentation that you mentioned the centralizers for uphole measurements with the Botrac. But do you also need to use centralizers downhole, or is it not necessary?
Yeah, so yeah, 100%, Cobus. So the thing is for downhole, typically depending on the angle of the drill hole, okay, it gets challenging where it's kind of perpendicular holes to the surface, okay, that's being drilled, and you've got a bigger diameter drill hole. So you've got that potential of swinging taking place within the hole. If it's at an angle, that Botrac will, basically kind of tend to lie on the bottom of that drill hole. So in that instance, it will not be needed. But if it's a perpendicularly 90 degrees hole and the diameter is a little bit bigger, then yeah, you have to compensate for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Seko, you raised your hand during pause section. Do you perhaps have a question? Doesn't seem to be. Are there any other questions, guys? You're welcome to put your hand up and ask your question.
Cobus, yes, I see Gerard's got the question, still referring to the board track. Previous versions had the rod stack orientation as the AZ to the hole. Is this still the case, or can you use the AZ to the hole collar? Gerard, yes, you can use the AZ to the hole collars as well. Maybe you can just kind of, if you have that instance where you have drill holes drilled in a line or in a typical ring drill, excuse the terminology, but if you've got a ring drill holes, then you can line it up and then basically use that same azimuth basically to do the deployments. I hope that makes sense. And that answers your question. Okay, I see you've got your hand up.
Seems to be happy with that one. Thanks, Gustav.
Maybe just on that, Cobus, we had a back Gerard and I was actually once back in the day, you know, as I've mentioned, when we kick off, it was early days. We had one specific case at Gerard Low at I think at Roshpina back in the day. And I'm just raising this as typically this is normally kind of the challenge, is that the big question is always, you know, what is the drill hole diameter? Because when I arrived on site with Gerard, I wasn't expecting that size of drill holes. And it's been a while that I've checked in with Gerard, just in general. I mean, it's a couple of years ago, but the drill holes were big. I arrived on site. I didn't kind of make the suggestion of using centralizers, but also that time we still don't have those size of centralizers. But the drill pattern that Gerard and them used was a bit bigger. And when I arrived on site, we had exactly that zigzagging effect. So Gerard, those were the days. I think we've come a long way. But those big drill patterns is still a challenge. Yeah, okay, yes. We should have used centralizers. I remember them as being a little bit bigger, but yeah, it's been a long time. Great catching up with you again.
Thanks, Gustav. It doesn't seem to be there's one message. Oh no, Chico said he had problems with his network on that side. So at this stage, if there's no further questions, I think we can call an end to this webinar. Please feel free to contact us on any of our social media pages or even on our website, and keep an eye out for our next webinar coming soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks, Cobus. Thanks, Paul.